Hey guys, today we're going to take a break from the normal episode, which would be working on our workshop right now, and we're actually going to work on a paying project. So today we're going to build wraparound deck steps. Alright guys, welcome to the Real Life Reddells. My name is Bryce Reddell, for those of you who don't know me. Like I mentioned in the intro, we are taking a break from working on the workshop because we got a paying job to go out to Fairplay, Texas and build a set of wraparound deck steps for a customer. So because it was for a paying customer and because we were on the clock, so to speak, I didn't stop and film any segments explaining what was going on or what I was learning from it. So what I'm going to do for this episode is I'll just kind of go through and I'll show you the time-lapse footage and I'll kind of interject every once in a while as to what you could do better than I did, where it really worked. Because there were some things that really kind of bogged down the process that it wasn't until my second day of working on it that I figured out a much easier way to do it. And so I'll explain those things to you here. It was really fun. It got a lot of really great response from Facebook when people saw the pictures of it. Everybody seemed to be genuinely impressed because it's a really, really nice set of steps. It's basically, there's 3 sides to this deck. And it ended up, because of the angles, becoming 5 sections of steps, and there were a lot of cuts, a lot of mitered cuts, a lot of compound mitered cuts, a lot of notch outs. I mean, it was probably the most complicated woodworking project I've ever done. And this is coming from a guy who took ledge stone and made a rounded bench. So I've done some complicated things before. So anyway, so let's get into it and show you what we were working with. Okay dokie. As you can see in the back window there, I am loaded down 15 12-foot deck boards, 8 8-foot 2x4s, 2 8-foot 4x4s, and then I think like 20 balusters and a couple other random boards, and then a $30 box of screws. That one hurt. I don't like paying $30 for a box of screws. Anyway, so I am leaving Henderson, Texas now, driving to Fairplay, Texas to go build some deck steps. I've got every tool I could possibly need, including the router table. So that I can round off edges on rails and those kind of things. So, anywho, this should be fun. So, here we go. Alright, so the first thing I had to do, obviously because the stringers for the steps were pre-existing, and they were in fairly decent shape. There are a couple that were broken off, and you'll see through the time-lapse I went through and basically used wood glue and some screws and clamps and put those back together. So they were in decent shape. So the first thing I did was take all the old steps off of there. There was some bracing in there, and ended up just taking all the steps off and then using those joist hangers and leveling the steps. I brought them all down 6 inches from the top of the deck, I think it was actually like 6.5 inches, but I made them all level at the top, and then I checked level at the bottom step, and every once in a while, if the steps looked funny, I'd check level in the middle, and then re-anchored them to the ground and used 4x4s. I cut down some 2x4s into stakes and basically got those things hammered into the ground and then screwed into the stringers. That way we started off with flat level steps, and you'll see as we go through those steps, went around and made sure they were all level with each other. So that was the first big part, and then from there it was simply a matter of just cutting the treads. So one of the choices that I made in an effort to cut costs on this was, number one, the rail kits. They were $40 per section for pre-made rail sections, but the problem with them was they weren't able to be adjusted to do angles to go down those steps because they were straight notches. They were little dados that were cut out to fit the balusters inside of it, and there was no way to angle that. So the other thing I did was with the 4x4 posts. They make specific posts that look exactly like what you're seeing on the screen, where it's notched out to fit up against the side of the deck, and where it has the beveled top to the post, and where it has those grooves cut into it. I did all of that with the circular saw. I just used the speed square and marked off a 1/4 inch, then a 1/2 inch space, and then a 1/4 inch, and set the circular saw to an 1/8 of an inch depth, and just ran it up against those marks on with the speed square as a guide, and basically then just used a chisel and broke those pieces out on all 4 sides. And then once I'd cut the last one, I used the top of that top notch as my guide to do a 45-degree cut with the same circular saw, but full depth obviously, and basically cut that 45-degree bevel at the top of each side, and then just put it on the miter saw and lined up the bottom of the bevel with the edge of my fence on the miter saw, and that way I had a pretty good section, and just chopped off the point and gave it a flat top. And so the customers didn't even notice that those were custom. They thought I had bought those like that, and so they thought it was $21 a post, and I had spent $10 on 2 8-foot 4x4s, cut them in half, used the circular saw and the chop saw, notched everything out, and I think it turned out beautifully. absolutely despise leaving things unfinished, but I'm out of daylight. It's almost 7 o'clock. I'm out of screws. I am completely out of energy. And I didn't bring sunscreen today, so I've been having to put lotion on all day. Woo, but it is pretty. It'll be even prettier when it's finished. Not bad, not bad at all. I saved about $180 by building the rails and doing the 4x4 posts myself. So now granted, it cost me more time because I probably spent, I don't know, 2 hours between the posts and building the rails. But it was 2 hours that could be underneath that Easy Up tent and in the shade when there was brutal heat. I mean, it was like 102 heat index when I was out there working. Did get slightly sunburned. I didn't have sunscreen with me, but I had, for whatever reason, my wife had a thing of Neutrogena hand cream in there. And so I was desperate. So I was smearing hand cream on my face and the back of my neck to protect my skin. And it worked. But oh my gosh, when the sweat got into that Neutrogena and if I even just touched my face, it got into the tear duct and oh, it burns. Do not ever put Neutrogena in your eyes. Just take that from me. Okay, it is 11. It is 11 in the morning, Saturday morning. And I didn't quite finish the steps yesterday. I ran out of deck screws, so made a trip to my old Lowe's in Marshall. Got to hug some necks and say hi to a lot of people that worked with me there. And bought another box of screws. So now I'm headed back out there to put the last couple of face plates in. I was really tempted to buy a portable or bench top band saw. They didn't have scroll saws there. They had the blades for scroll saws, but no scroll saw. But I told Janet if we do another one of these, which we've already had 2 other people contact us saying, hey, we want you to build us deck steps as well. I told Janet I'm getting a bench top bandsaw for next time, because that would make some of these cuts and these weird angles and notching things out so much easier. Because even the jigsaw, the blade moves too much, and so when I'm trying to do these real fine angles and all that stuff, it's a pain. Which is why it took me a full day yesterday, plus however long I'm going to be there today. So for this next one, I'm getting a bandsaw for it. Anyway, got the deck screws, headed back out there. Fell asleep at 7:45 last night. Didn't wake up until about 8 this morning. But you'll notice when I do start working on the angles, I had to notch out a lot of the boards, and it was a pain in the butt. And so the second day, I just kind of got fed up with it, didn't want to notch any boards anymore, and so I pulled out the reciprocating saw, the Sawzall, and where the face boards were going to have to go in, because that was the hardest part to notch. The steps, you really couldn't avoid it. Those had to be notched, but that was pretty simple. But the face boards, you were having to miter and then notch into the long edge of that board, and it was a pain. So the second day, I just took that Sawzall and cut an angle into the stringer on each side so that I didn't have to notch the board anymore. It ended up being like a 25-degree angle, and it worked perfectly. I could not be more pleased with this project. The customers were thrilled with it. They've got a wedding coming up, so they're waiting until after that wedding to have me come back out and finish putting the rails, which obviously at this point I've kind of committed myself to making custom rails and custom posts. But it's good because I enjoyed it. It was a great experience. Enjoyed working with the customers. They were wonderful. So all in all, I could not have wished for that project to go better. And the great thing is I learned from it and learned some of those tricks, especially using the Sawzall to notch out an angle on the inside of each of those corners, so that when you're trying to put a faceplate on, you don't have to notch the faceplate. Like I said, you still have to notch each of the steps inside those angles. Can't be helped because you've got two boards that are narrowing the further back you go. And so I ended up having to cut in about 1.5 inches from the back of the step, and then about 2 inches from each side of the step, so that it would slide all the way in. But once we figured that out, and once we got all the angles, and it was 22 degrees and 24 degrees, and then it was mirrored for the other side where it was 24 degrees and 22 degrees, it really went fast. So anyway, I had fun with it. We've already had 2 other customers kind of reach out and say, hey, we want you to do the same thing for us. So now that I know how to do it much faster, I think we can make a go of that. So if you got any questions or comments, or if you learned anything from this, please feel free to post comments below. I promise we do read them, and we do respond to them. So if you got any questions, we'd love to answer them. If you got any ideas of how to do this any easier, share those as well, because I would love to know those. Yeah, so I just told Janet that if we're going to do this construction thing, we're going to build a drive gate. There we go, sorry. We're going to turn that into a drive gate, because I'm not hauling everything back and forth through the fence every time I got to do this. So anyway, I hope y'all learned something from this. Hope it's been of value to you guys. What I encourage you, like I said at the beginning of this video, we're doing a lot of work on this workshop right now. If you know somebody who's got a shop that they want to fix up, our whole challenge with this workshop, even before I found out I was unemployed, we set ourselves a challenge to renovate, remodel this entire workshop. It's 12 by 24 without spending any money on it. Now we had to spend, I think, like $35 on studs to rebuild that wall back behind me, and I'll show that in another video. We haven't posted it yet because our priorities shifted to fixing the shop side of this building. But anyway, I want to encourage you, if you are looking for ways to do improvements, man, you come to the right place. Click subscribe, click the bell, and you'll be notified anytime we post new videos. We are big on finding ways to make horrible, wretched, worthless spaces functional. And so this, of all spaces on our property, has been the most horrible, unusable space. And it's transformed completely in about, it's been right at four weeks that we've been working on this. And I'll just show you real quick. That's the shop side of it. And then back over here is kind of the, I guess you'd call it a she shed. So it's gonna have this paneling, the pickets, planks everywhere. We're gonna have a media tower here with the TV and the stereo and some chairs and possibly some benches in here. So this will be where the kids and the wife can come out if they just need some time away. We're working on getting an air conditioning unit for out here. It's not terrible right now. I've been sitting out here, I'm not sweating. And it's 101 degree heat index outside. So with the fans and the way it's set up, it circulates pretty well. And we've done a lot with this plastic sheeting and with some insulation. It's pretty comfortable out here, actually. I'm not saying I'd want to sleep out here or take a nap or anything, but you know, it's a good place. So anyway, Feel free to share these videos. We're trying hard to get a lot of good content that will benefit you guys and give you some ideas of how to make improvements to your house without spending a ton of money on it. So share it with somebody you think might benefit from it. Click like, and we'll see you guys next episode.